Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this workshop on day 2 of Culturally Competent Conversations for Equity and Belongingness Summit, or the C3EB Summit. This is going to be such a powerful question and answer session between a husband and a wife and two human beings, really, that is going to tap into everything we've been talking about today on what it takes to build culturally competent, conscientious citizenry, on being more informed, on being more engaged, and on just being more proactive in what we need in life and how we go about achieving it. So before I introduce our speaker and the question asker facilitator, I do have a couple of housekeeping notes. Make sure you comment, whether you're watching this live or later. Please make sure you comment and give us your feedback on what you liked. That always helps us improve our services, and I know our speakers appreciate it too, because it helps them improve their services to all of you as well. So please make sure you comment and make sure you ask your questions. This is going to be an incredibly powerful session, so I know there's going to be questions coming up. Secondly, before I get into the bio, this would not be possible without our partners and sponsors who believed in this mission and who decided to walk the walk with me toward equity, toward belongingness, and toward intentional inclusion. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to Essential IT, our web team, to Defy the Status Quo Marketing, our content specialist, Zanzibar Enterprises, and the Nielsen Company. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. So without further ado, I would love to tell you about who we're shining the spotlight on in this session and who our expert is for this session. It is none other than Terrance J. Pope, who is a motivational speaker and the founder and CEO at Transitionz7 L3C. Terrance Pope, who's 30 years old, was born and raised in the city of Detroit. After the incarceration of his father and the sudden death of his mother, a life-altering exchange in 2011 would land Terrance in the hospital after being shot 7 times due to gang affiliation and the influence of drugs. Terrance, now a paraplegic incomplete, is a believer in Christ, a husband, a father, and the CEO and founder of Transitionz7, and a mentor who helps young men transition from the streets into a more positive and functional way of finding and living out true manhood. It's also why he's a motivational speaker, an incredible one at that. His mission is truly to make a difference in the lives of men and women who might have every reason to give up hope and to live out their true identities and callings. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Terrance J. Pope to the C3EB Summit platform. And asking the questions and facilitating this session is our speaker from yesterday, Mrs. Ayanna Pope, who is going to be asking her husband some very introspective and thought-provoking questions. So without further ado, Terrance and Ayanna, welcome back, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here once again and to talk to you today, Terrance, about more about your story and just your experience, because you are covering life beyond disability.
Yeah.
So we did hear in your bio how you were injured, but give us a little bit more detail about that night when you were.
9 years ago, I would walk into the store, high off ecstasy and liquor, filled with a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. One reason was because 4 months previous, for my injury, I had lost my mother. I ended up pulling the plug on my mother. And it kind of broke me down, and I was in a bad place at that time in life. So I began to do a lot of drugs. I began to drink a lot, and at that time, I just felt like I didn't want to live. I felt like life didn't have meaning for me. And I would bump into a guy around 11, probably about 12 midnight, inside of a store where who I quote unquote had beef with at the time, being gang affiliated. And we had an altercation, and before I know it, when I was exiting the store, I was being shot 7 times. First time was 3 in the leg, and I turned around and run, and he was shooting me 4 more times in my back.
Wow. Now that's something to try to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
Being shot that many times, and 7 is a number that we're hearing a lot now, especially with the recent event of the young man who was shot 7 times by the police in front of his children, unarmed, and he didn't make it. So the fact that you're still here, that's a blessing all by itself.
Absolutely.
But I know with living after that, there's stuff that comes with that. That I know that was a time that probably changed your life. So tell us a little bit more about that night when you woke up from being in the hospital. When did you wake up? And how did you feel when they told you that you were paralyzed?
So when I was first told that I was paralyzed, I couldn't process it right away. I had a lot of family and friends around me, a lot of support system around me. So I wasn't able to process it right away. I was still in the mindset that I was going to walk and things were going to be okay. And, you have family and friends around you telling you that you're going to be all right. It's not that bad. But I then began to come face to face with my true emotions and my true reality into the dust settled when people began to leave and go back to their lives. And now I have to go back to my life. And I became face to face with the true emotions, the true insecurity of it all, the fear of it all, the anger of it all. I began to feel those emotions, the emotions of wanting to give up, the emotions of questioning God. Why did he allow me to live? And me not even wanting to live anymore. And it wasn't the first time that I felt those emotions. They advanced. These emotions advanced, but I've been feeling those emotions long before then, due to my childhood experiences that I've faced. So after I was placed in a wheelchair, like I said, just those problems advanced. I began to feel it a lot more. And it was the first time that I had to deal with it sober mind. I used to can go back to the I can used to try to cover it up with drugs and alcohol, but at this time I was fresh out of the hospital. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be drinking, that it can damage me a lot more. I was newly injured and it can mess with the livers. I was more prone to losing my life. So I knew that. So it was the first time that I just had to deal with those emotions, sober mind. And like I said, it was a lot of insecurity, a lot of wanting to give up. And the biggest problem that I had that I can remember was wanting to run around with my son again. Wanting to run around with my son again. And at this time, he was 2 years old. And not being able to chase him around the house, not being able to pick him up. I mean, just the simple things that will remind you of how valuable being an able body is, things that we take for granted. And just the small things that I couldn't do. And, just long nights of crying, long nights of just wishing that I was dead, but not having the guts to commit suicide myself. So that's where I was at. I was just in a real dark place. I was just in a bad spot in my life. And, it's by the grace of God.
And it shows not only, to the grace of God, but also just it has to be some kind of inner strength to still be here and have accomplished the things that you have. And I'm not even talking about business owner, or I'm not talking about just motivational speaking. That those are big deals. But being a present father and being a present faithful husband after experiencing such a traumatic event. I have to commend you.
Thank
you. And thank you for pushing on to this point. But I do want to ask you, being all the things that you are and the roles that you play in society and in people's life, how would you explain this very thing being possible for someone else who has experienced a life-changing event that has left them with some form of limitation, seen or unseen? How was that possible?
It's the only way it will be possible is simply believing that it's possible. simply believing that it's possible that we're not defined by our disabilities. We're not defined by what happened to us in life, that we can create our own reality. We may not be able to do things like we once did it, but we can find creative ways to do it. Yeah. I always say that circumstances birth creativity, and things that I will be able to do on my feet. I found different pathways to be able to do it in the chair. I was speaking to my wife yesterday. We were talking about, I was telling her about when a man loses his sight, his hearing advances. And so same way with a disability or having any inability, that when you lose something, when you lose anything, a part of you that's significant, that's part of you, like my legs, for an example, I gained strength somewhere else. And that strength was in my motivation. That strength was in my ability to communicate with people, to build relationships with people. I began to find other gifts, and where I will use my physical as strength, and even in scenarios when in anger, when I'm angry, I will use hands and fists. You learn how to articulate yourself now. You learn how to convey yourself. You learn how to diffuse a problem with just a word, instead of using your fist. So you find other strength when a certain part of you becomes.
That's great, and I like to even make it in the plain so that everybody can understand, whether you have a physical or any kind of limitation, or you don't, and you find that you're fully capable. There's going to be times in life where you may have to adjust to a new norm. Yeah. Find what that new norm is, and start there and build upon that.
Absolutely.
I like the way that you talked about creativity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that would help us heal in more than one way. Yeah. If we just tap into that creative side of us. Yeah. And then what you talked about you lose one thing, but you become heightened or stronger in another area. Yeah. You may not be physically limited, but a lot of times when we go through hard circumstances, some people are more heightened in faith. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that we can find to relate to one another instead of finding out how we're just different. How are we the same?
And another thing is, people don't believe this, that even with me working out now, even with doing the motivational speaking, even with building relationships with people, I mean, everything that I have found that I am gifted at, I wouldn't dare have done these things on my feet. Mm-hmm. When I was up, I was passive. I was fearful. I thought that I can only handle situations by physical, with the physical, and I didn't read books. But one thing, we spoke about this in your section, when I said that in Dean Gregosky's book, he said, I'm gonna just quote Tony Robbins. He said, "What if life didn't happen to you, but it happened for you?" Right. And for me, it was that's where my quote comes from. Sitting down was the tallest I ever stood, because that's when I began to find myself. When I got injured, the Bible says all things work for the good of those who love the Lord and who are called according to His purpose. So that's when I began to find my gifts, and that's when I began to find who I was, my true identity, and I began to work out. I began to read things that I would not dare do on my feet. I began to do them in a chair, and it goes back to the quote that life happened for me. Life happened for me. And I think that is, I think that if we all look at it sometimes from that perspective, that when things happen to us, it's not always meant to destroy us, right, but it's meant to birth something new. Right. Birth the person who you were meant to be before life and tragedies dwindled out that fire. So.
And I absolutely agree. Just being a capable person is the same. It's the same thing. I can't agree anymore. How important your mindset when you go through something. Because if everything is happening to you, woe is me. But if everything is working for you, oh my goodness. Yeah. How much greater can you be on the other side of this? How much value is actually being added to you because of what you've been through? So I love your perspective on that. With your experience in being disabled and in the workforce, what was your biggest realization in making your transition to getting back in the game, back in the workforce?
My biggest realization was that it was possible. That was my biggest realization. When I was like, you know what, I can work. And I had an incident when I began working where people tried to label me and put me in positions because they thought that I was not capable because of my disability. And that's one of the greatest. That's why I love the underdog. That's the underdog advantage, because people tend to doubt you when they look at your circumstances, your situation, and so they wanted to give me a desk job. Because for those who don't know, my first job was peer support at a mental health facility, and I dealt with people who had mental health, and they wanted me to be the guy behind the desk, sitting down, working on the computer. They didn't think that I can help people with their laundry. They didn't think that I can transport people to the hospital or take them to get food. But like I said, that's one of the perks of being an underdog, because you can prove people wrong. And so that was my biggest realization, that it is possible. And I'm gonna show y'all that it's possible. I'm gonna change the narrative that y'all have and the perspective that y'all have with people who has disabilities or any inability, that it is possible that we can still function as whatever the norm is. We can still function in that way, but you just have to give us a chance and meet us at a common ground. Get to know me, get to know me, get to know what I'm capable of doing. Because even though I'm in this chair, there's some things that I'm capable of doing that you're not capable of doing. Right. So do that make you disabled? And even when just scenarios, and I know that people just want to be nice. When I'm going into stores, or when I'm going into the gym, and people like, I got the door for you, I have the door for you, or they would just wait patiently, and I thank God for them, just to hold the door open for me. But they don't even know, or have the understanding that I can open the door for myself. I can come in, and I can do this myself. I thank God for them, but it's just the whole stigma that people who are, disabled, we're not able to do as much. But that was my biggest realization in the workforce, is that I can show people that it is possible.
Right. And can we just let that marinate for a second? Because so often we do that to people, whether in a chair or not in a chair, just like people, we're trying to relate here. A lot of times we do that, and we look at a person, we size them up, we see how tall they are, we see what color their skin is, we see what we think we can assume what accent they have. They don't speak English, or it's a lot of ways that we do this. Look at people and make judgments, or look at people and assume. When those very people that you do these things to, you are missing out on the true value of who they are.
Absolutely.
Because you let your judgment speak before your willingness to get to know who you're coming in contact with. So go ahead.
And that's why I thank AJ for having this summit, because it's very important. It was scientists did a research on rodent before it was a rodent, and they were worried about the rodent because they had this rodent in this environment. The rodent was not evolving. It wouldn't learn new behaviors. But what happened was they concluded that it can't grow. It can't learn nothing new. But one guy came and he was like, you know what, you're wrong. The problem is not the rodent. The problem is that you're keeping the rodent in the same environment. Get the rodent around different other rodents that have evolved and has learned new behaviors, and you will learn quickly that this rodent will adapt. So they changed the rodent to another took the rodent to another environment, and the rodent quickly adapted. And that is how us humans should be, that we began to learn from others. We began to communicate with others and learn about people, other races, learn about other disabilities and things like that. And we'll quickly evolve, we'll catch on, we'll adapt, so, yeah.
And you brought something similar which spoke. It was a picture that it had a fish in it, it had a monkey in it, it had a giraffe. There's all different kinds of animals, but they were in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
So the person looking at the animal thought that they were no good because the fish couldn't climb the tree. No, the monkey is good at this. The fish can swim good. You just have to have the person in the right kind of environment where they can thrive. And that's just not for the person who's placed in judgment. That's for the person who has the limitation as well. Maybe, if you do better over here, not just a desk job, not just something that you can just go sit in the corner and blend into the wall, something else where you can find, and maybe you connect with people well. That's something that I know that Terrance is really good with. We can go to the grocery market, we can go anywhere, and he just talks. But and he it doesn't matter what the person, how old the person is, what color the person is, he just connects with people well, and that's just his gift. That's your natural calling. Yeah. And I can't imagine actually how miserable you would actually be if you sat at a desk job in a corner and just doing the same thing. You'd be.
I was able to operate in my gift. Funny story. It got to a point to where it was like that no one. They know that. I mean, you can obviously see I'm in a wheelchair, but people started treating me like just a normal guy, and I loved it. Until one situation, I was outside. It was the middle of the winter, and and my wheelchair rolled away from me getting out of my car. And there was a lady went in the building, and she was like, "Hey, it's a guy in a wheelchair outside that need help." And they came out and looked and was like, "Oh, that's just Terrance," and that's how it should be, that we're treated equal. That I'm in this wheelchair, but this wheelchair is not me. And we can even bring it home a little bit more when we talking about the environment. Even for me, when I transitioned, I couldn't understand why I wasn't changing. When I wanted to change in the streets, when I wanted to do better, when I wanted to get out, I couldn't understand for the life of me why I couldn't change, why I couldn't do better, why I couldn't grow. But it's because I was staying in the same environment. And it wasn't until this situation had to happen to remove me from that, to where I was able to see myself and began to grow and began to evolve and began to see all that I was created to be, knowing who I am, and even being placed in a wheelchair. I had to grow again because I was in a mindset like, I'm not being around these other crippled people. I'm just being honest. I'm not going to be in a wheelchair long, and I thought that I was going to be out the wheelchair for about a month, but the Lord had different for me. It's been 9 years, but had I stayed in that mindset, I wouldn't have got around other guys who were in wheelchairs showing me how to live life independently, and how to work and how to go about driving a car, or how to hold my head up and roll myself instead of being so insecure and pushing and afraid to push myself. So that's all. Life is about evolving, getting to know one another. And so, to go back to your question, that was one eye-opening moments for me.
How many lessons can we all learn in just hearing this? I hope that your ears are hearing what I'm able to hear. You're not, you're in the chair, but I hear you beyond. I hear you beyond what you know. It's so relevant to me, just being a person, a human. So I'm enjoying this. Given your experiences, what do you feel can be done on society's end to make it possible for a person who may have a limitation of any kind to work or to enjoy life just as a person who is fully capable?
Just understanding, not judging the book by its cover, not limiting us by our physical capabilities, because it doesn't, our physical capabilities doesn't define our mental capabilities. So not limiting us and saying what are our do's and our don'ts, but coming in to us and finding out, like, hey, what are you good at? Who are you? Because you may think that you need me to lift boxes when I'm gifted at organizing the shelf, or that there is a place in society for us, and that we're not no different from who you are. Well, our disability, it just it can be seen. Yours is unseen. So if you will look up the word fear and then you will look up disabled, there's similarities there. So are you disabled as I'm disabled? You know, and we talked about that a little bit yesterday, that people don't even know that they have disabilities. Most of this world have some sort of disability. And to narrow in a little bit on that, when I went to work, I'm telling you what happened when you begin to judge a book by its cover. When I began to work at the mental health place doing peer support counseling, I thought that I was just going to go there and be Superman. I was like, you know what? I'm gifted. I can communicate with people. I get along well with people. I'm about to go and change the world. This is my calling. But what happened was I got there and I began to talk to people, and I began to see myself in a lot of those people. And I had the stigma on mental health that it was just for crazy people. And but I've learned, you know, and that's what understanding would do. And surrounding yourself with people that you wouldn't normally surround yourself with. Yeah. And I began to learn these people, and I began to see myself in each and every individual. So what I have learned, that we all have some sort of disability, seen and unseen, you know. And I think that once we understand that and come to a common ground and say, hey, you know what, yours may be seen, mine is unseen, you know, but you know, let's work this thing and let's make something.
So what I got from that in a nutshell is humble yourself or be humble. Yeah. Because when we don't come humble, sometimes things have to happen for us to humble us, to see, hey, we're not too much different.
Absolutely.
Oh, that that person was, let somebody find themselves, in a challenging circumstance, and then notice, hey, that person was stronger than I thought they were. That Absolutely. Person was, because you are willing to get up every day.
Absolutely.
Put on your clothes, go to work, and do the same job that a lot of people complain Absolutely. About. And so I just, again, commend you for taking life by the horns, regardless to what happened.
Yeah.
Regardless to why it happened, you did what you had to do. I do want to add, just because I am your wife and I hang with you a lot and we go places, and I know this was your question, but I'm just going to add a little something to it, just having my experience to go with yours, being with you, that one thing that I think that can be done on society is make sure people can not just work, but just enjoy life as a person who's fully capable. It's just being mindful. I think a lot of businesses, even churches, they forget.
Yeah.
How are these people who may be in a wheelchair, how are they going to get inside of our church? How are they going to get inside of our restaurant to sit down? Can this person read our menu? We should have something that some braille, something that can be read for those who are visually impaired, people who may not be able to hear well. What can we do to accommodate and really think about everyone? And I have to say that, before I got with you, that wasn't my reality. So I didn't really think about it. Everything was convenient for me. And it's, I guess it's natural for a person to just think, hey, okay, it's okay for me. So it's okay.
Yeah.
But being with you, it just brought a different awareness to,
Absolutely.
How many things haven't quite made it to that place where it's for everybody. And I think that's the great thing about this summit, is because it's to include everyone into the conversation, include everyone when you talk about who matters. Yes, Black Lives Matter, no doubt. But when we talk about the disabled community and things like that, when you go to a movie theater and you can't get in because there's no way for you to go up the curb, or just little things like that, it matters. And so I just had to add that little bit, because we've been places, restaurants, and different places that we want to go, but we don't have that way made to help make things easier for you.
Yeah, as a independent man who is in a wheelchair, it's a strike. It's a strike to the ego. When we're out and the curb is too high and there's no up ramp, and you have to pull me up, and I thank God that she's my wife, and she doesn't mind, but it's still a strike to the ego. I think that, and I'm glad we're doing this, because I think that it's all about understanding other people, dotting the I's and crossing the T's when you are establishing businesses. Understanding that everybody is not an able body, and just understanding that we have to make room for people, we're not the outcasts. We're still human. Because it's even I know that people with these businesses, I know that they have maybe family members who are in wheelchairs, and I know that they have family members who are facing similar disabilities. So I think it's just about dotting the I's, crossing the T's when we're and considering everyone. And like I said, that's why I thank God for this summit, because it goes back to what I said, that getting to know other people, getting up out of that small circle, that narrow mind, and expanding yourself and going to see the world, going to talk to people. And I think that every leader, every business owner should do that. It's tough. It's a strike to the ego. It's definitely a strike to the ego. I know that just the other day, we ran into a situation where the elevators was down. The elevator was down twice, and it was a strike to the ego. But me, I'm a little hard-headed, and I had to bump myself all the way up the stairs. And even though at that time I didn't mind, it was one of them days that I didn't get my workout in, so I'm like, what, this could be some fun, But it's still, the second time that I came there, it was like, okay, look, we can't keep having this. So it's just about being mindful, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, considering everybody.
Well, I definitely enjoyed this conversation because I think it brought so much awareness. That's the word that I'm just feeling echo through my body, is just awareness, not just of the community who has inabilities, limitations, whatever way that you want to call it, but to bring awareness to ourselves.
Yeah.
About the things that we do, consciously, subconsciously, we don't think about it. So, the summit is here to bring awareness, have everybody's eyes to be open, ears to be open to consider different perspectives, and seeing what we can do as a collective to make this world an inclusive place where we can all come, we can all sit down, we can all be the best version of ourselves, we can all be our best self and have the same chance.
Absolutely.
And things like that is so important. And so thank you, Terrance Pope, my dear husband. Thank you for just sitting here with me and answering these questions, answering the questions for the people. I hope that they got something from it. I'm pretty sure that they did, because even though I'm with you, it just did something to me. So thank you so much. And we're about to have dinner soon. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening and being with us today.
Thank you for tuning in. You guys have a blessing. Guess we'll keep doing it until. So what I will say is that I'm thankful for this dialogue. It's really eye opening. It's even a reminder for me of what's important, And I know that there are people out there who are facing similar situations. It may not be a wheelchair. It may not be any physical something that you can see. But we do understand that, it can be hard. It can be hard. And even for my wife, I know that it can be a little hard for her, it's not hard for you, but it can be it's not easy dating someone, in a wheelchair, or it's not easy. But I think that the most important part is that you continue to push, that you continue to, do all that you can do.
And and I think, just like yesterday, we were talking, you and I were talking, you were interviewing me, and we were talking about the traumas and how you can sometimes be caught in the very thing that you are, or you have gone through, are going through, depending on what kind of thing it is. Support groups are so important. Absolutely. And I feel that so much in due time, of course, because there are so many people who are facing challenges that they do think that they're alone. They do feel like they're the only one. And I can only imagine for a person who may be just a couple like us. It's a new thing it's a new experience for the person who might be newly injured, or they may be been injured for a while, or the person who is coming and getting with the person who is has a limitation, it can be.
Oh, keep talking.
Oh, we were just talking. We were just talking briefly, and we're just gonna wrap this up. But
I know. I just got
about
like,
the challenges
super curious about the rest of the conversation. So I'm like, I want to jump into that.
no, we were just talking about briefly how we're together, and there's challenges, of course, that comes with being that can come with being with a person who has a limitation of any kind, seen or unseen. And so I was just saying the great benefit of support groups, because we often think when we go through things that we're the only ones, because that's our big event. That's that big thing that happened to us. And so it's our bubble. And it feels like it's just us and we're the oddball, and don't talk about it, hush hush. And that causes distress, torment, whatever you want to call it, inside. And so
no, one of our most important things was to get around other couples.
Yeah.
Who I forgot what they called it.
Look, we just started with other married couples, but to go even more in depth with this, I think would be powerful.
Yeah.
Just to help other married or just people who are whatever the relationship, know how to coexist with a person who has a limitation of any kind, and talk about those challenges and how to overcome those challenges and still be able to coincide together.
I agree. I think that's actually a really, really necessary service, because the two of you and I know the reality of that population, right? In terms of how many people are out there thinking exactly what you said, thinking they're the only ones suffering, thinking that their problems are unique to only them. Granted, they are, but in the sense of that there's like nobody else who could be able to understand them, nobody else who perhaps has endured what they are currently enduring and can give them some advice or some insights or even just some moral support. If nothing else, just moral support to say, I understand. I actually understand because I was there, and so I think what you're doing, I know my husband and I had to go through that when we first got married, because he married somebody with a traumatic brain injury. He didn't even know what that was. He had no idea in the first few years of our marriage, when all of my symptoms would start flaring up. He had no idea how to support me. So in some senses, while dealing with all of my symptoms and my health, I also had to then teach him how to help me. And and that is a burden that, in retro, I'm glad we went through that in retro, but would it have been incredibly helpful for me to just be like, here, go talk to this person, they'll explain it. I don't have the capacity. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what you guys are doing with that is phenomenal, and it's so needed. So, I just want to commend you on that. I think it's going to be incredibly powerful. It already is, but it's going to be even more incredibly powerful. So thank you so much for shedding so much light and insight onto something that people don't get to hear too often, and they don't realize how prevalent, how disability is in life, just when you look at disability across the board, and how it is really, really, really possible to have a life beyond it, and to have a life that is not consumed just by your challenges and limitations, that there's still ways you can rise above it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And to all of our listeners, whether you're tuning in live or later, make sure you comment. I promise you, I'm going to get these comments to Ayana and Terrance, and that they can respond to any questions or concerns you have, or if you want to get in touch with them to learn more about this program that they have for couples, definitely drop your interest in the comments, and I'll make sure that they get it. And thank you for tuning into this. And once again, Ayana and Terrance, thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your insights, and for being the inspiration that you are, just by how you live your life on a daily basis. It's truly inspiring, so thank you for that. And once again, last but not least, this would not have been possible without our sponsors and our partners. So thank you to all of them. That's it for now, I think. We can wrap this up. And so we will see all of you in the next session coming up. And we will, if you want to get Ayana and Terrance's contact information or websites and things like that, please make sure you check out their speaker bios on our website at www.c3eb.com. You don't even have to wait for us to respond to your comments with it. They are already up. So you can contact them anytime, and I hope you do, especially if you are somebody who either has a disability or a challenge, or you are a family member or a friend or a near and dear support system of somebody who does. There are people out here to help. So reach out and take the help that you need. And on that note, we'll see you all in the next session. Bye.